All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Special Governance and Priorities Committee meeting for Wednesday, April the 26th, 2023, and recognize, as always, that we are respectfully holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Introduction of late items is first. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. For late items this morning, agenda item 5A1, Council Priorities Workshop, we're adding the materials, and documents, and PowerPoint presentation. For agenda item 5D1, sorry, this microphone is a little crazy. We're adding the remaining actions from the April 24th, 2023 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, the draft integrated action plan and draft priority actions for a green Nanaimo and a connected Nanaimo. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry, and I should have recognized that you indeed are our clerk today. Thank you for being here. Today's Special Governance and Priorities Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018 number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only, please. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to attend electronically, and I see on my screen this morning Councillors Armstrong, Brown, and Manley, so welcome to them. All right, we've dealt with late items, so I'll ask for a motion for adoption of the agenda as amended. Councillor Perino, Mayor Krog seconding. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have no minutes to adopt, so we're going to move into reports, and the first is under Governance and Management Excellence, Council Priorities Workshop, and we're very pleased to once again have Ms. Alison Habkirk here to help facilitate our work. Ms. Habkirk, welcome.
There we go. Thank you. My pleasure to be here, as always. Thank you so much for having me back. You have my memo, I assume, and a redraft of the text. I thought that I might just walk you quickly through the changes that I made, if that would be helpful. If not, I can pass that over. Okay, I see some nodding heads.
Please do.
Just walk through that, and then we can just turn our minds to the draft itself. Before I do that, I will just say that I understand you've had a couple of your city plan, action plan workshops to prioritize the actions laid out in the city plan. So you have a taste of where this is headed. So this being a broad framework for your work, but then there's much more detailed work to be done down the road, both in the action planning component and in your capital planning component. So based on our discussions of March 13th, I made the following changes, and they're listed there. First of all, Council agreed that we would continue on producing a high-level 1 to 2 page document that communicates Council's key areas of focus for the term, as opposed to a much more detailed, integrated strategic plan. I retained all 5 sections in the March 9th draft. I reordered the sections as you had decided. I removed the we commit sections of the text. In the capital project sections, I added, again at your request, the waterfront walkway and One Port Drive projects. To the implement city plan section, I added the 5 city plan goals. To the council message, I added reference to the territorial acknowledgement, and I drew that from your city plan wording. I added a reference to the climate change and adaptation, again, drawn from city plan, and I've noted the page numbers there if you want to go to that, and added the topic of emergency preparedness. I also made a number of other changes that were my recommendations. I reframed the document, actually, to be fair, this was Jake's suggestion, that we reframe the documents as a framework as opposed to a list of priorities, because that really is what it is. It's a framework for your work for this term. I added a descriptive narrative about the plan drawn again from City Plan on page 1. I added within our resources to the capital projects section, just to provide some kind of indication of trying to limit the expectations that this might generate out in the public. And I added a short section on governance and corporate excellence at the end, which was clearly in your last strategic plan and in your last term a very important part of the work that the council did, and I have taken away from the discussions. Remains very important, and thought it deserved a little bit more profile than it had in the March draft. So those are the changes I've made, and I'm happy to hear council's comments, and if you want to go through section by section, we can do that however you would like to.
Thanks, Ms. Habkirk. First, I appreciated the addition of the governance and corporate excellence section. I think that's always important to include. And I had a quick look through your information last night, late, but I was quite impressed with it. I don't know if council would want to go through page by page. I'm not convinced that would be necessary, but certainly welcome any comments or feedback that council would like to provide at this time. And to this point, I see a couple of speakers, starting with Councillor Eastmuir.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, thank you so much for the changes that you've made. I like that you've added the territorial acknowledgement in the message from Mayor and Council at the beginning. In the third paragraph, it talks about the focus areas, and I think there's maybe just, we could tighten that up. It says the ones that council believe need special attention and resourcing. I think we could take out the focus part there. That's implied by it being the focus areas. Otherwise, I think the messaging is pretty tight, and I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Krogh.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you to Ms. Habkirk. Thank you as always. You don't get hard because you're not an expert and not good at your work. There's your compliment of the morning. I'm quite pleased. I like this a lot better than what has happened in the past. I wish I could be critical, because that would reflect, the fact that you're not perfect. Joking aside, but I think council will be hard pressed, but I'd look forward to something, a more critical comment than the compliments I'm just giving you. I'm happy with what it does. You have to respect that the importance of the document is not to please us, it's to speak to the public. And I think this speaks very well to the public. It's readable, it's understandable, people will get it when they see this, they'll understand. And so I'm quite happy with it for what it's worth, but again, if someone's got some more useful commentary than I've got, I'd certainly love to hear it this morning.
Thank you, Mayor Krogh. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Chair. That won't be me. I'm happy with the document. I think if I were to offer some criticism, it would be of the criticism that has remained throughout the process, and that's that it's hard to really focus in on what we're going to do over 4 years. And I'm noting things like we have broad objectives and within our resources, and it allows us to kind of pack anything we want into it. That said, I think this has captured the conversation we've had, and I'm happy with the focus on the capital projects, the naming of the capital projects. So yeah, no criticism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again. Exactly as Councillor Hemmens said, it's excellent and does answer so much. For me, I wish, and it's more our fault. I certainly take the blame that we missed the opportunity to say some things around the issue of health care, not social health and public safety challenges, but there's a whole issue that our community is facing around healthcare initiatives. So part of it, if you refer just back to that, is the whole piece about the tertiary care for possibly involuntary type care for people who need support to get through either drug addiction, mental health issues, and homelessness issues. And then there's the whole issue around, you know, not having enough doctors available within our community. People just do without a general practitioner for years. And then there's the whole piece around what our hospital needs and what our community not only needs but deserves to have, which is a major expansion cath center and a radiation treatment facility. So it's something that we're working on at the regional district, but for me, it's just the concern that this document doesn't have it, but that's not your blame, that's our blame for missing it. We're so into looking at the other things, so I'm good with this, but I wish that I'd put that piece in about just the physical health care that our residents go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perino, and thank you for never missing the opportunity to put in a plug for improved health care in our region. Always. Yes, thank you. Duly noted and appreciated. Council, I'm not seeing other hands or those wishing to make comment, and my understanding is that we're not looking for any motion on this. If we're generally pleased and satisfied with this framework, and that's what I see it as, a framework for the term ahead. I'm very pleased with it. So if there's no other comment, Council, I think we'll be in a position to excuse Ms. Habkirk and move on. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mr. Rudolph has a couple
Just in
comments.
terms of
Sorry, Mr.
procedure,
Rudolph.
it would be our requirement then to bring this forward to a council meeting. Not sure if we can do that for next week, but maybe the next one, and it would be presented for your approval. My question would be, would you request Ms. Habkirk be in attendance, or would that be something that we could handle on our own, or she could do via Zoom? But that would be, the intent is to get you to formally approve or adopt the document through a council meeting.
That certainly makes sense to me, Mr. Rudolph, and just my immediate thought would be it would be appropriate, I think, to have Ms. Habkirk at least online to do a very brief introduction of the document and the process that led to it, but I look to council for other direction if wished. And again, I'm seeing no objection to that. Councillor Eastmere, please.
Sorry, thank you. I did want to just touch briefly on the communicating with the community part, and I just wondered if there's anything tangible we can put in that section as far as ways that we will be communicating, because it's just a very broad statement. Is this a place where we could potentially add? I see Sheila's hand.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Councillor Eastmere, and I'll look to Mr. Rudolph or Ms. Habkirk for further commentary on this, but we will be coming forward with a communication strategy for Council to approve, which will outline the ways in which we will communicate with the community once we have done a survey, which we're actually reaching out to the community to find out how they like to receive their information. So I'm not sure if it would be a better place to follow and align with this document in that one.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Maybe, I don't know if it would make sense to even mention the communication strategy in this section. It's just, if I was a member of the public reading this, I would go, well, how are they recognize it's effective, you know. It doesn't really give me an entry point as a member of the public to see how I'm supposed to connect with council. So maybe mentioning strategy.
Thanks, Councillor. Ms. Habkirk, did you wish to respond?
Yeah, I think if that's in the works, we can certainly add a reference to it, which I think would be completely appropriate, and yeah, maybe lend some substance to that section, so, yeah.
Okay,
I guess my immediate thought, as we've said, is that this is a general, broad framework, and if we start to get too specific in one area, that could lead us into wishing to be more specific in other areas, which could eventually erode the general intent of the overreaching document, I think, but that's just my opinion. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. On the question of how to go forward, I actually have a contrary opinion and think that this should be delivered by the mayor. I think this is our document that we own, and I'm open, obviously, to the idea of having Ms. Habkirk introduce it and the process and the rationale, but ultimately, I think this is something that we should own at this table as this table's document.
Thank you. And I'll go to the mayor next, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not sure what the mayor, what Councillor Hemmons is referring to without getting down to the specifics, but that's my point around this. This is a statement that we intend to, as best we can, communicate with the public. And people hear from the city in different ways. Facebook's out of fashion, I'm told, except for old folks, and I don't even go on that. Newspaper, our newspaper still gets read. Lots of people subscribe to the Times Colonist. I don't think that should be in the document, telling the people, here's the document, and by the way, this is how we're communicating it to you. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I notice Ms. Webb, our communications guru in the back, and she was shaking her head vigorously, well, not vigorously, but enough to communicate that we should leave the communications to the communications experts, and that's what we have. I appreciate what Councillor Eastmer is driving at, but again, as the chair has pointed out this morning, if you start to descend too much into the detail here, then you have to there, and pretty soon we'll have, you know, Councillor Perino's full list of desires for the hospital that we're not going to be building, and the RDN's paying for it. So I'm just saying I think we need to pull back to what we have and respect what's been done.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I just wanted to agree with Councillor Hemmons' comments. I do believe too this should come from the mayor. It's our document. And we get lots of criticism for all the consultants doing stuff, so it'd be kind of nice for the mayor to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm hearing general agreement that it goes to a council meeting for introduction to the public, and possibly the mayor takes the lead on that.
And Ms. Habkirk could be available for questions or comments if they were put to her. I would just say one of the keys that we've been focused on, and what I thought Ms. Habkirk was going to help us with, and I think she's helped us, is see the alignment between this kind of document, the city plan, and ultimately committees in that conversation, which you're having later this morning. And so whatever we do, it's good to have alignment. Now, one thing that, there's a few things that city plan doesn't cover. Governance is one, in the same sense as, and this is an example of a piece of governance is communication. So it is important. We can't refer all things will not necessarily be covered in that. You're going to have opportunity to put on agenda items for future GPCs and committee work yourself. I think communication is one of them, and communication, there's been work to refresh the 2013 communication strategy and bring forward all those components that would be in that, have a framework conversation, and then council can give instructions and, you know, things like that at that time. So I just wanted to remind you that city plan doesn't cover all topics. So there was a need for some reference to governance in this, and then that's got a lot of issues attached to it as well. Fiscal, just administration, there's a lot of pieces in there. So I thought I'd mention that. So I'm glad that that's been added as at least a notation in here. And it'll find its way through your conversations and setting up the task forces or committees or even the work plan for GPC over the ensuing few years.
Thanks, Mr. Rudolph. And I see Councillor Armstrong's hand up. I'm not sure if that's a holdover. Apparently so. And I see no further comment. So I believe we're good with the idea of bringing this document to an upcoming council meeting. The mayor will take the lead on introducing it, and Ms. Habkirk hopefully will be available to answer any questions or comments that might come up. That said, thank you very much. We really appreciate your expertise in developing this strategy and this framework, Ms. Habkirk.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So, Ms. Gurry, we move to item number 2 in reports. Here we are in a governance and priorities meeting, and we're going to talk about governance and priorities meetings. How appropriate.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's very appropriate. So these next 2 reports that are on your agenda, I'll be going through and how I've seen it, and I feel that these reports need to be taken together, read together, and then we can break them down separately. So that's what I'm hoping this brief PowerPoint does, but really this conversation is for you all to have. This is your committee, and as pointed out, I will be pointing out later, in the current terms of reference and the proposed draft terms of reference, it actually states that the Governance and Priorities Committee is a place for you to look at your committees, to add, remove, and have those conversations here at this table. So this slide and the first report covers the GPC, Governance and Priorities Committee itself. And it kind of outlines what the committee was, what it has been, what's worked, what could be improved, etc. All of this feedback we've been gathering from you since December of last year. We had a committee meeting, a Governance and Priorities Committee meeting on December the 12th, and then again February the 13th, where we did polls, and then we've also had these strategic priorities discussions and the framework that Ms. Habkirk just went over with you. So through all of those sessions, we've taken all of the feedback and we've brought forward what we think are some options or recommendations for you to consider and discuss here today. So this slide outlines what the new model of governance, which the previous council brought in 2019, the GPC, was sort of meant to be this mother committee or this, overarching central committee. And the current committees that council has, Finance and Audit Committee, Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness, the Mayor's Leaders Table, those are some of the current committees. There's supporting organizations like Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization, Tourism Nanaimo. Then we have some other committees and boards listed, the Special District 68 Sports Field and Recreation Committee, some other legislated committees, the Water Supply Advisory Committee, Design Advisory Panel, Board of Variance, and currently in abeyance we have the Environment Committee. That's one of the decisions hopefully you'll get to later on today. So included in your package is an updated terms of reference for the Governance and Priorities Committee. So some of the highlights include ensuring space for in-depth discussion and debate on council-identified strategic priorities, acting as a forum for reviewing and considering community feedback received through a public engagement process, and a forum to review council's committee structure and recommend changes to committee mandate and role, which I outlined is in the current terms of reference, and we recommend keeping that going forward. Another proposed change from the information that we've heard is the structure matching the 5 goals of the city plan. And this is intended to achieve what Mr. Rudolph was even mentioning as well, an alignment with the city plan, council strategic priorities, and that framework that Ms. Habkirk just went through, and staff work plans that in turn align with the budget. So we're looking for that alignment in that circle that I don't know if you remembered, that kind of flow from the city plan to the strategic priorities to staff work plans and budget, is trying to find that alignment and have them all tie together. So also proposed is upcoming topics and initiatives schedule provided by a public schedule of upcoming GPC agenda topics and engagement opportunities. So different from what we've done before with the GPC, where we have that agenda planning section that lists the upcoming GPCs. Thoughts are of expanding it to include other initiatives should the committee here today wish to go forward with a town hall option that was discussed on February 13th that had high polling results. Those topics could be listed. The public could have the availability to see these upcoming topics. The committee could decide what time of day they wish these topics to be done, like during the day, during the GPC timeframe, or for a quarterly town hall, it could be an evening meeting at 7 p.m. As well as we would put these topics of interest for the public on our Bang the Table software, look for some feedback, gather that feedback before coming to the town hall and having the committee talk about that. So some of the recommendations in the GPC report for the committee to do to decide and discuss today is endorsing the Governance and Priorities Committee terms of reference as attached to the staff report and endorsing the proposed changes to the GPC agenda structure and upcoming topics and initiatives. And as I noted several times now, it's now time for your discussion. So I'd like to turn it over to you and have you discuss not only the options that are available to you, but also going into the next report, you'll have this opportunity again, but some things to keep in mind are in the next report and the upcoming slides is the quarterly town halls, is potential other committees and or any other recommendations that you may have, but keeping in mind the GPC, the original intent of the governance model, and any other changes that you might like to make based on the report and or the PowerPoint slide.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. And before I go to speakers, please give me your advice because this report is obviously connected to the following report. My preference would be to see if we can deal with the recommendations regarding the GPC meeting per se, and then have a separate discussion over options regarding committees, town halls, and so on. I think otherwise we're going to muddy the water by talking about both things at once.
Exactly. So that is kind of why they are separated into two reports. You do have to read them both to keep these items in mind, but the recommendations on the GPC report are those recommendations, and then we'll move forward to the next report. So if you could just keep your topics right now to the GPC and that first report and your discussion, that would be great.
Thank you. Mayor Krogh, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. You know, we all supported...
Sorry. There you are.
Thank you. We all supported, well, the previous council, we all supported the concept of the GPC. We listened to Mr. Cuff. One of the things I've learned, and I've shared it before with council, is in politics, having town halls or similar kinds of forums where the public engages with their elected representatives is all about the timing. If you happen to have the town hall and there's a hot topic, then it's a meaningful, I would argue, a very meaningful exercise because the public actually attends, pays attention, contributes. It gives the politician or politicians there a chance to respond, to consider, to hear views, and to balance interest, which is what your job is. And particularly as council members, we don't come here on partisan slates, or I don't believe we should, certainly not at this level. So I think we have been missing the boat to some extent, and it's not because it wasn't available to us. I don't think as council we have taken advantage of the opportunities that are recommended here. In other words, provide a more informal forum for discussion of governance matters, open debate, discuss when it's scheduled topics of particular interest to council and the community. I think we need to do it a little more often, and I realize it's difficult. The timing, council schedule, I sometimes pace through my weeks ahead and think, goodness, when are you going to fit something in? But I think it's important, and for one very good reason. In a world which is deluged with communication, far too much communication, far too much information, arguably. I mean, I liken it to a grocery aisle in a large grocery store. You have too many choices, and to determine what's actually important is sometimes hard. And I think that we need to deal with that with more public engagement, not necessarily with e-town halls or methods that are seen to be providing more access because everyone's concerned about access, et cetera, et cetera. I get that, but somewhere along the way we're not listening to anybody in a meaningful way in some respects. I mean, I'd like to think the public has confidence that when they send emails to mayor and council that everybody reads it, and they do, and I'm satisfied they do. I'm not sure the public believes that's occurring. And so they need, and by they I mean the public in general needs an opportunity, even if it just turns into I'm trying to find a polite word to describe a situation where people just get around and complain. That is useful in and of itself. It lets the steam off the boiling kettle, if you will, to use a tea analogy this morning following my discussion with Mr. Corson. We need to let the steam off, and certainly that's what we've been seeing, for instance, around public safety in the last few months in this community. Another crime rally on Thursday. people are feeling, too many people are feeling alienated from the political structure, and we're not seen as being responsive, and not necessarily at our level, but at all levels. So I'm quite supportive of the terms of reference. Well done, staff. And I think we need to take seriously the concept that we're going to need to be able to throw together quickly in a timely way the kinds of public forums. And my vision of it would be, it's an opportunity for the public to speak. It's run rather ruthlessly by whoever is chairing it. And then, with respect, because we live in a representative democracy, a half an hour or an hour or whatever at the end of it, where the politicians who are there as council have heard all the discussion and have a chance to debate with one another and respond quite specifically to what the public has to say. Firstly, it demonstrates in a sincere and open way that they've been heard, and it gives them an opportunity to understand what our thinking is and what perspective we bring to it. Because after all, we have the benefit of 900 plus people who provide information and guidance and work hard to ensure that we're informed and can make good decisions. I don't expect the public to spend their every week reading the material that comes before council. It ain't realistic, and I don't expect it. That's what they elected us to do, but they need to hear and see how that impacts on us. And anyway, I've dribbled on a long ways, and I appreciate it, Chair, but compliments, but again, I think we need more of that interaction, and it's literally face-to-face. I don't want to hear about it or see it in Facebook or some news clip or a 15-second clip that's played on Global or Czech or whoever. Not that I'm criticizing the work they do, but I think it needs to be a much more face-to-face approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, and I stress that I also would like to have more commentary regarding issues like town halls and public safety topics and so on, but I think that's better suited to the following report. What I take out of this report is that our GPC will basically continue as it has in the past, except we will be providing more opportunities for council to bring forward topics and indeed hear more from the public. Ms. Gurry, is that a correct summary?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's pretty much correct. I think that some of the lessons learned from the GPC is we still do need to have some workshop materials to go through and present to you and walk you through items of your priorities and in our work plans. But we do realize that this committee needs more time to engage and focus on matters of topical matters of interest, and as well as have it be a place where you can have those discussions and you can delve into matters, roll up your sleeves, and have those conversations amongst yourselves.
Thank you. Mayor Krog, is that a holdover?
No, sorry, I thought I turned myself off.
No. Councillor Eastmere.
So is it too early to talk about attachment F? That's the updated terms of reference, or is that what we're discussing right now? Sorry.
That is what you're discussing right now. So yeah, the terms of reference, we can go right now to the agenda and bring it up on the screen. And yeah, so that's what's changed.
Yeah, so I just wondered why we're removing the part about receiving presentations from external agencies and subject matter experts.
So that hasn't exactly been deleted. It's been worded into another one on the new one there, right there, the second bullet from the end. So we have just incorporated and changed some of the wording. So it hasn't been removed, but you see it's the second bullet.
I see, okay, thank you so much. That definitely makes sense. I think I got a bit confused by the color coding, but I see what you're going for there. Thank you. Thank
you. Councillor, are there any other questions or commentary, or is somebody prepared to move a recommendation? Councillor Hemmens, and seconded by Councillor Perino, moving the staff recommendation 1 and 2. Any discussion, Council? Councillor Hemmens, anything? Everybody's happy? All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And any opposed? I see none opposed, so that passes. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you, Ms. Gurry. So we'll move on to the second report regarding more specific council committees and task forces.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, moving on to the next report, council committees and task forces. This is more specific. I will flip back to that previous slide, the first slide in the presentation that shows the GPC and the other committees at one point. But council committees and task forces are in the community charter. They are a tool for council to use to help accomplish priorities set by council during their 4-year term. Currently, as a reminder, I'll go back to that slide. You have the Finance and Audit Committee, Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness, the Mayor's Leaders Table, the Special District 68 Sports Field and Recreation Committee, which we will be bringing forward membership, because we do need 2 members of council to sit on that committee. The Water Supply Advisory Committee, which hasn't met in some years now, but it is a panel or a committee that is by bylaw required to meet about certain matters regarding water supply. So it's not really an active get your priorities done committee. It's a legislative committee. You have your Design Advisory Panel and your Board of Variance, which is not a committee where members of council sit on. And currently in abeyance is the Environment Committee. And there is a recommendation to dissolve that committee as based on the conversations that we've had in the last few months with council and this committee on committees. So highlights that we heard from the polling that we did on February the 13th at the Governance and Priorities Committee was a desire to use GPC over establishing additional committees. That was one of the polling questions that came out that we saw and took note of. Ensuring diverse membership is embedded into committee terms of reference. If there are additional committees, ensuring that diverse membership is included. There was strong support for town hall, e-town halls, and the support was to provide additional opportunities for public participation, a lot of what Mayor Krogh was speaking about, and the important that topics align with public interest and concern. So again, changing the focus of the GPC to more of an engagement amongst yourselves with the public and matters topical to the public interest. So some options for discussion for you today is that you utilize the GPC in place of additional committees, aside from the ones that we have, for monitoring the city plan and other matters that the committee would like to have more focused time on, because that is one of the discussions that came up on February the 13th, was whether the GPC should be used to monitor the city plan once or twice a year or whenever the need be, and that be the place to do that. And or you'll see in some other options for you to consider that you have a biannually, twice a year monitoring process of integrating or implementing the city plan integrated action plans. That was a mouthful. So these are some options for discussion. Should the committee choose to strike additional committees, some direction to staff outlining a clear mandate and purpose for the committee would be really appreciated, and then we would come back with a draft terms of reference for you. And some things to consider as well, having your discussion, is if you do want to strike an additional committee, what would be the desired outcome? Like what are you looking to achieve? And how would it further assist council's work during their 4-year term, and how it aligns with the city plan, with your priorities, etc. So some things for you to consider during your discussion. And now, as with the theme, I'd like to turn it back over to you to have those discussions, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. I'll kick things off here under your options for discussion slide. The one that first caught my attention was the second bullet, implement quarterly town hall meetings for emerging matters of interest to the public, and I think it goes to the mayor's earlier comment And I was a little surprised, and obviously my memory is faulty, but in your report, it reads that a Zoom poll regarding quarterly town hall meetings received strong support with 8 members in favor. I don't doubt what you're saying, but I recalled our discussion being quite different in that it was brought up that the public town halls we've had have not been that frequent, but also not that well attended, and I remember stating, in my opinion, not that effective. I totally support the idea of a town hall if there is a topic of interest, some emerging issue that needs to be dealt with public input, but to have quarterly town halls for the sake of a quarterly town hall, I would not be strongly supportive of. So that's my first comment. When I read dissolving the Environment Committee, I gulped because I thought that would touch a sore point, but when I see it's going to be dealt with under City Plan, Integrated Action Plan for Green Nanaimo, then I'm reassured that we won't lose that as a focus area. So those are my initial comments, and I will go to other councillors. I see Councillor Perino and Councillor Manley and Councillor Armstrong. Sorry, in that order. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. And the second bullet concerned me as well. I think it's important to allow, obviously, quarterly town meetings, to allow town hall meetings when the need is there. As Mayor Krogh said, it's no use having it if there isn't a hot topic to talk about. If there is, I think I'm certainly very willing to attend and look forward to hearing from the public when there's an issue that we are working on or need and want input. The other part is, and I see that Councillor Armstrong has also put up her hand, so I'll wait to hear. But we talked about a committee for safety, security, and so forth, and I'm not sure if that's part of the the SPO, or if it should be a separate committee. So I'll look to Councillor Armstrong to talk about that a bit further. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Manley. He was next, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. I think that yes, having quarterly town halls. I think we should have town halls that are based on issues or things that come up in the community that are pressing at the time, rather than trying to just schedule based on a calendar. I'd like to propose that we have a environmental monitoring and audit committee that's made up of local experts and people who can give an overview, biannually or annually, of how we're doing on the environmental front, rather than the environmental committee. And it would be less burdensome on staff. And I think would allow for some public engagement, but also expert comment on where we're at and how we're doing. We're not necessarily experts on a lot of the environmental issues that are at play right now, and I think getting feedback from a group that has some level of expertise would be helpful to council. So that's what I'd like to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Manley, and I recall that concept being part of earlier discussions as well, and I think Councillor Geselbrecht might have mentioned something along similar lines. I'll go to Councillor Armstrong next, and then Mayor Krogh.
Chair, sorry, I'm just wondering, I think that might have been a motion from
Oh,
Councillor.
I'm sorry.
So we would.
I didn't hear the word motion.
Me neither.
Yeah, I said I'd like to move that.
So if there was a seconder, it would be.
Sorry, with all due respect, Councillor Manley, I'll certainly accept that motion, but would you mind if we have other discussion around the general topics first, and then we can come back to that and indeed other motions?
Yeah, that's fine by me, thanks.
Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Armstrong next.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, it's important to go back to having having a community safety, public safety committee. It was very effective last time it happened. We could refer public to that committee first, where they went, and they had lots of very good, robust discussion. and community members were part of helping us find solutions. So when it's time for motions, I will be making that motion to form that committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll put you on the list. Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll try not to get into too much of a debate through you this morning with Councillor Manley, but candidly, if we're going to have that kind of a committee, then I'm sure the business community and the large property owners will want a special committee comprised of quote-unquote experts in economy and taxation who will want to review everything we do around those policies, and somebody else will want a committee of experts around what we're doing with parks and recreation and all of those things. You know, we are the council, and we do have staff, and we do have people who certainly make their views known to us. My concern would be that we will, once you start down this road that way, as opposed to what historically happened with the Parks and Recreation Commission, for instance, which provided an outlet for people, then you're going to end up with what I suggest with great respect will be either a great talk fest or an opportunity for critics of council and political wannabes to spend their days not advancing the public policy agenda, but advance their own agendas. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I suspect that's a holdover hand from Councillor Armstrong.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Rudolph, yes.
I do have a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Rudolph,
I
first.
thought your comment about hearing everybody's conversation around all topics might be useful, and then come back to it. And I mean, if there's an appetite to have monitoring or committees or some kind of framework around, and I think it was Councillor Gesselbrook talked about the city plan, we could come back with more details around how that might work. Some of those things might be in play already to a certain extent with some of the topics with the SPO, Prosperity Corporation, and those types of things. So I think you could line up what's in play with each of those a little bit. The only other footnote on public safety is task force versus committee. My understanding of the province is indicated they may be willing to give us some money. 75,000 is what I heard for additional work on public safety space. So it could be more expansion of their downtown public safety action plan and that type of thing. We're waiting for any kind of clarity around that and what strings, if any, are attached to their money that they said. But that's what we understand they were talking about. So there could be that council will have to entertain if there's more work that needs to be done and beyond that strategy. And I would instantly suggest if that comes along that Mr. Nielsen might be a person that could add to that process, but that's still preliminary. So, and the only other piece is that Mayor Krog already said that one of the values of certain types of committees and forums is to allow people an opportunity and space to vent and to speak, but it doesn't necessarily generate ideas. It just gives a place for that type of thing. So I think if you had sort of a broad brush conversation about all the topics and then came back and sort of said, okay, now what next steps do you want to do? You may want to have one-off committees on certain topics, and you may want to just sort of look at your options within each of the topic categories. So this is really very much setting the stage for, okay, how do you handle the entire suite of ideas? The other thing that's part of all of this is what's the role of the city council? You know, what's a council meeting for? It's decision making and debate. When you're well informed because you've had input from monitoring committees, or GPC is a place where you can roll up your sleeves and get more information and then make informed decisions and that type of thing. It's there's a lot of pieces to this, but maybe you're not going to get completely through this conversation today, but we're trying to move this forward in a way that makes sense holistically. And maybe there's more topics, one or two topics that are more important than other. And certainly the one that's been mentioned seems to be right at the very top. Public safety is just part of the issue of mental health and addictions, homelessness and stuff. That's one topic in a suite of topics. You know, I probably totally confused it.
Oh, no more than I was already. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to add, based on some of the discussion I've heard as well, the quarterly town hall meetings proposed. are proposed for quarterly, but of course, if there was no topic of interest, of course, if there was nothing to talk about, it would get canceled. It would just basically be a placeholder to have those topics should the need arise, and that venue for people to sign up in advance, like with their what we've heard through the engagement software, those types of things. And just like a GPC, if we don't have a topic, and then we don't have a meeting.
Thank you. And just before I go to Councillor Hemmons, and I see Councillor Manley and Councillor Armstrong have their hands up as well, I just want to clarify something, Mr. Rudolph. So, and Ms. Gurry, you can help as well. In terms of our process in this meeting this morning, are we entertaining specific motions to take a specific path, let's say public safety as an example, to form a committee? Or are we looking to identify areas of special interest where staff could come back to us at a near future date with some options of how to deal with those topics? Can you give me guidance on that?
Thank you, Chair, and Mr. Rudolph could add, so both. So we were looking today for specific ideas for committees. We have heard from you since December on different things of discussion. We tried to come back with a summarizing what we heard based on the polls and based on the discussion from previous meetings. So we do have some options for your discussion today that we would like your guidance on. Should you wish to strike a committee, we would like to know that today, and what we would do is we would come back with a draft terms of reference and get your approval and have further discussion. So if there are committees you would want, because we have had these discussions a lot, then yeah, we would like to hear from you. Should you not be ready for anything and or move these options today and there's nothing to come back with, we wouldn't be coming back.
So, and again, I want to be fair to council, because I suspect there's at least two motions forthcoming, very specific, regarding committees. Would I be in order to accept those motions and proceed with a vote as they argue for them, or to in fact defer those conversations?
Chair, yes, so they would be in order, and like I mentioned a couple times and in the report, this is the place where you can strike committees and discuss the structure of committees, and then staff would come back with any motions. So say Councillor Armstrong or someone moves a motion for a safety committee, we would come back with a draft terms of reference for your approval, etc., to go forward. And just again, like what the purpose of committees are for, monitoring committees is one of them, but a clear purpose and mandate would be beneficial as to what the desired outcomes of the committee work would be, because that's helpful for staff as well. And then we do have our committee operating guidelines that govern all of committees. So committees make recommendations to council, and then they come to council for a decision. They don't direct staff, so it does have to come up through council that way as well. So those are just some things to keep in mind when you have your discussions.
All right, Councillor Hemmons, you've been patient. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are probably going to reflect the nature of this conversation, so they're broad. I would support a safety committee because that is the conversation that is everywhere and on everyone's lips, and I think committees are a really great opportunity for community engagement and two-way dialogue. And I think on a matter that is so important in our community, that I would support that. I'd be curious to hear more from staff on the Environmental Monitoring Committee, only because I'd be curious for monitoring committees on every one of our priorities in city plan, and I see the GPC acting as an avenue for those monitoring committees. So whether the Councillor Manley can maybe identify, would he be amenable to having regular monitoring committee meetings at the GPC for all of the priorities and bringing content experts in to help us really figure, are we meeting our targets, et cetera, et cetera. That said, I if it's argued passionately, I recognize that committees hold a specific function that isn't necessarily about moving the business of the city forward, and that still is an important function. I'm going to offer a contrary opinion on the town halls and I think it's a great idea, even if we don't have a topic. And I hear the mayor's concerns, but I also think it's a core part of our job to sit here and listen, and to do that where required, that if there's education pieces or conversation, but that is democracy and it's messy, and it could look very messy, but that's what we're here for. I think I'll leave it there, Chair. That was very rambly. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's quite in line with the rest of our conversations. So I acknowledge the hands of Councillors Armstrong and Manley, and I suspect those topics we have already touched on, so we will come back to those. Are there councillors that have other issues that they want to raise in a general way before we move to possible motions? Mayor Krogh?
Thank you, Chair. And I just, if through you, just to respond to Councillor Hemmons, it's not the messiness I'm concerned about. I'm quite happy with messy. That's why I want the town halls to be around topics that are hot. Having been involved in this for a long time and pulling the experienced whole thing out of my behind this morning, if you don't have a hot topic, you get a small group of same folks out who come to every meeting, and it won't contribute anything to the public debate. You really do have to focus on things that are of interest to the public, and then I'm happy to get down in the messy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the idea of the quarterly town halls is a good one, just because we need to help build the habit of public engagement, and I think we've fallen out of that habit, and so maybe that's why we feel like we wouldn't get enough engagement at the town halls. But by making the commitment to at least being able to hold them quarterly, then we help people understand when those opportunities are for them to be engaged. And I think that, if you don't think we have enough hot topics to fill like the next 2 years, like you're not paying attention. Like we've got a lot of hot topics going on: public safety, housing, the interest in public art. I think that's something that there's been an acknowledgement from the last council that, the arts and culture kind of fell away because you were so involved in, righting the ship and getting good governance back on track. And so I think that there are some major topics we could easily schedule for the next year and a half easily. And if after that point we've, hit those major topics and need to take a pause on holding them as regularly, but, I think it would be a good thing for us to commit to and show that we are really interested in hearing from the public, whatever it is that they need to talk about. Thank you. Thank you.
So at this point, I'm seeing no new speakers. Mr. Rudolph?
I know we're talking about e-town halls and advocacy and all that, and I'm still on the city plan, and I'm sorry, but I just wanted to know, I think we could come back with some, if how this is ultimately going to come up, and we're going to spend some time later today, is how is this going to be monitored and tracked, and what's the, so the idea that was advanced was maybe some sort of advisory panel for each of the 5 topics. There are some committees already in place that are under some of those categories. And for example, under health and the healthy communities category, we already have a systems planning organization. We have the accessibility committee. We have things that are fitting under there. So there may be some gaps and there may be some duplicity if we just blanket that. So if we could probably, if there was an appetite to unpack that and see how that chart that Ms. Gurry had fits under the categories and then fill in some of the gaps. That might be one way, and I don't know if there's anything currently under that would, any committee that deals with environment, so maybe that's a unique one, but we could sort of give you if that was an appetite, some sort of terms of reference for how one of those might work, and you could use that as a case example or something like that. So again, looking at the example of how do you track and monitor and what additional committees could you put in, and there could still be special committees on top of that. So I think that would be a useful exercise to sort out that diagram into what do we already have, mayor's leaders table, all these, how do they fit into the categories? And is there still a need for more, advisory panels on certain topics? So I'm suggesting that if that kind of instruction came to us, we could come back with a little more clarity around that and unpack that a bit more, in addition to whatever specific motions you have today for terms of reference for a safety committee or whatever else you might have. So just going back to that, and then there's the town hall piece, which I suggest is good. You're going to have turnouts for specific topics as long as people see them as relevant to the day. So then they can be very useful. And that's a great idea, the habit of having that, and then baking that into some of your committee meeting structure here more deliberately. So you've got a few topics going on here. So I know at the end you'll find a way to sort it out, but any direction you can give to us that would help you move forward would be useful in a cohesive way in addition to specifics.
Thanks, Mr. Rudolph. I appreciate that clarification, because I think it really comes back, and I'm not going to be cutting off discussion or possible motions, but I think what you've just said brings us back to the recommendation that staff, having listened to our commentary today and taking these thoughts into account, can come back with recommendations on how council proceeds to deal with them. Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rudolph. So I think, based on Mr. Rudolph's discussion, the second bullet from the end on your screen, striking monitoring committees to meet biannually to monitor progress, implementing the city plan integrated action plans, is something that should the committee be interested in, we could come back on options on how that would work. I think that's what Mr. Rudolph is saying.
Right, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go back to previous speakers, and I'm starting with Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you. This is in regards to the town halls. I think 4 is too many. I think quarterly is too many. I think 2 would be more than enough. We just did for the 2. I don't think there's enough topics to generate that, so that's my thoughts on that. And then if you are ready, I would like to make the motion for the Public Safety Committee, if you're ready for that now.
Yes, I am not seeing any new speakers on the list, so I'm prepared to entertain motions now. Go ahead.
So I'd like to move that the city strike up a Public Safety Committee, and staff can, with input from police bylaws, can structure what the priorities would be or what would be referred to them. Or staff could make the, I don't know, Ms. Gurry, maybe you could help me, the references as to what would go to that committee. And I just used the example. I did a lot of research.
Sorry, Councillor Armstrong. Before you go further, no, before we even get a seconder, I need clarification on, again, if you wouldn't mind, on the wording specifically of your motion, because Ms. Gurry's trying to write it down. And
that's why I'm asking Ms. Gurry for help as to how she would like me, if she would like staff to do the references, or if she wants us to do the references of what comes to council. I'm looking for clarification from her.
All right. Just a second.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Armstrong. So if your motion is seconded and passes, staff would come back with a draft terms of reference for your consideration. However, if and what I'm taking from what you've said so far is that you would like us to consult with police, fire, and bylaws, and probably the CSOs included in that to work on the terms of reference to bring back for your consideration. But if you could give anything specific as to what you would like the committee to achieve, its purpose mandate, what its goals would be, if you could give that direction today, that would be helpful for when we bring back the terms of reference.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Sorry, Councillor Armstrong. So I understand that now. So I'm satisfied, and I will ask if there is a seconder, and then you can speak to it, Councillor Armstrong. Seconded by Councillor Perino. Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Go ahead. Your audio is not great, so if you could just speak clearly, please.
Okay. So one of the things when I did my research, some of the committees even actually look at the police priorities. So all police priorities go to that committee first, and then they make feedback to the police, and then after that is recommended by the committee, it then comes to council. That's an option you could look at. It goes so far as to some of them that they even deal with the staffing issues for the police before the recommendation comes to council. What I was looking at is when we were looking at the previous one, which I was part of, when we had issues that were coming forward, such as like needles in the school grounds, etc. So all the partners were at that table, and because there wasn't a budget needed, It did not come back. It only came in as a report. So it would be to look at all the nuisance issues that are coming towards the city where they could be sent to that committee first, such as we know areas where there's lots of garbage, et cetera. So they would strike up the priority of which stuff would be done, things like that. Again, the policing issues that we're hearing about from the committee, is there a way that we can start bridging between the police and the community as to their dissatisfaction with the police? Things like that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. So it is moved and seconded. Now I'm going to ask for any discussion, further discussion on this motion. And I see Councillor Perino. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I certainly agree with everything that Councillor Armstrong has said. I also think that this particular committee could help us with some advocacy work, and I think that's an important goal that we need to continue to push, particularly with the provincial government. So, you know, for me, having this group together to help to bring ideas forward would be very beneficial. I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley, did you wish to speak to this motion?
Yeah, I would actually.
Go ahead then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm supportive of this committee. I think that public safety is key, and really like the people that are most vulnerable and the most at risk in public safety are those that have lost their homes, you know, for no other reason than living in poverty or having a disability or being a senior on a fixed income and being evicted for whatever reason. And we have a lot of very vulnerable people on our streets. And I think that key to public safety is to ensure that we do our best to make sure that people aren't victimized on our street because they lose what is their main security, and that is a home. And you know, we have a large homeless population in this community, and many of them are unseen homeless, and but they are known to other people in the community that are housed or unhoused and are, as the mayor would call them, wolves in the community, predators. And so I think that's an aspect that I would like to see covered in this safety committee as well, is that we work to make sure that our most vulnerable citizens, those without houses, are protected in this community as well. So I'll be supporting it for that reason as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley. On this motion, Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, I will support, but I am very curious to see these terms of reference come back because we've just given some very broad direction, including nuisance properties and response for our most vulnerable and coordination with RCMP around funding. So I just caution, as someone who was involved in the setup of the SPO, committees and such don't solve the problems that we're facing. And I would argue that a tighter mandate and a tighter terms of reference would serve us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think your point's well taken. Mr. Rudolph?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think staff should accompany the terms of reference with a report that identifies issues and options that are there in terms of the composition of the committee, the mandate, that type of thing. We can draw on examples of other municipalities. Some are RCMP municipalities, some are police municipalities, you know, they have their own police functionalities. I've been involved in two, one here for a short time and Abbotsford for several years. So there's possibly some issues around what type of people would be on what's the mandate, what authority they would have, that type of thing, but also just the composition of who would be on that type of committee and how often it would meet. Is it a monthly or is it quarterly, or, you know, so there's probably some options attached to that. And Councillor Manley's introduced a whole different, newer topic into that conversation, which is relevant. And how does that then relate to the systems planning organization and those types of things? So I think we'd do ourselves a service to talk about the story and attached to all this, as well as just a specific terms of reference, because there may be a couple of options in terms of implementation. So I think that would be something you need. And we certainly could put together terms of reference, but there might be options around putting that together. And we'd have to put that in the report.
Thank you. I will recognize Councillor Eastmuir, and then I'm sensing a degree of consensus, so I'm going to be ready to call the question on this motion. Councillor Eastmuir?
Thank you. Could I suggest we we make the scope even broader to also include, because I think public infrastructure, things like sidewalks and streetlights, are a really important aspect of public safety. So I just wonder if this public safety committee could also address, placemaking and the idea that that our urban design helps feed into the idea of safety. So if we have like alleyways that are dark, it doesn't feel safe. So I wonder if there is potentially a place within this committee to help us consider how we, as a city, create safe feeling spaces for people where they have the space to live comfortably. Sidewalks and streetlights being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we're certainly broadening the scope, and functional design, I suppose, does relate to public safety. So it'll be very interesting to see what type of mandate we end up discussing for this committee. But I think in general terms, I've heard from council, and I'm ready to call the question on Councillor Armstrong's motion. So all in favor, please. Councillors Eastmuir, Hemmens, Thorpe, Perino, Mayor Krog, Councillor Manley, and Councillor Armstrong, I'm sure, has her hand up, yes. So I believe that is unanimous. Thank you. So I'm going to go now back to Councillor Manley, who indicated a possible motion.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to move that the city strike an environmental monitoring committee that brings together a panel of experts and community leaders to advise council on environmental issues, the progress that we are making, and areas we need to focus on.
And before Councillor Manley starts to advocate for his motion, I'm going to call for a seconder. Councillor Eastmuir is seconding. Councillor Manley, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This would be like a third leg to the Prosperity Corporation and the SPO. So we have a Prosperity Corporation, and with respect to the mayor's comments, the Prosperity Corporation includes the Chamber of Commerce, which includes developers and builders. And that organization is helping us to set a course, on economic issues, but also to advise us at where we're at and how we're doing. The SPO is bringing together some 20 different social service organizations that are dealing with poverty reduction and homelessness in our community. And this would be a third leg where we can get some analysis on how we're doing environmentally, what we can do in this community, how we can improve what we're succeeding at, and also provide the public an opportunity to engage with a committee that is focused on environmental issues. I think that having a third leg to our social services and economic planning is important. A third leg that deals with environmental issues. It's a crucial part of our survival. We need the environment to survive in, and without planning and thinking our way through some of the issues and challenges we face in a cohesive and coherent way, we're just traveling down a path willy-nilly. So I would move this motion for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Perino, but first Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair. And in response to this, the city plan identifies 5 goals: a green Nanaimo, a connected Nanaimo, a healthy Nanaimo, an empowered Nanaimo, and a prosperous Nanaimo. If we're going to be monitoring, I appreciate Councillor Manley's remarks in suggesting that, this Prosperity Corporation, et cetera, will perform that function to some extent. And I will soften my position on this, but all I want to emphasize is that if you're going to have that, then we might wish to make it clear to the systems planning organization that we are expecting them to undertake a similar kind of work, because otherwise it will be quite legitimate for the public to demand that other, how shall I say, monitoring committees be struck consequential on the 5 goals around which our city plan is in fact identified. Keeping in mind that all of these meetings will require staffing and reports. They don't just happen out of the air, and there will be financial consequences, not substantial, but you know, we will be stretching our staff. There is no question about that when we're looking at these. I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to find the words. I want to say this as respectfully as possible, but I struggle with comments like we're moving in a direction that's willy-nilly. I think that our staff have done an excellent job to try and make sure that whatever we do as far as development, parks, recreation, art, whatever it is, it's done respectfully with very much the environment in mind. So I just want to say I'm not thrilled to hear those kinds of comments. I think our staff is working very hard to do that. Having said that, my big question, because I'm not against voting in favor of this, but I'm very concerned about how staff feel we could initiate this kinds of a committee and what would they see the goal being, because I don't believe that our staff have been willy-nilly about how this town has grown. I think it's I can't begin to, I wish for all you people who've grown and been born and raised here. When you see this city for the first time, it's breathtaking. And it's because of the work that have been done by past councils and the staff and the incredible work to make this city beautiful. Yes, there are problems, but there are problems in every city. So I'd like to know through you, Chair, to our staff, what do they see could be done with a committee of this type?
I'm not sure if staff are prepared with an answer, but I see Mr. Rudolph bravely.
I think on this one, there is a uniqueness to the environment portfolio, because this is still one of the committees that hasn't been retired from the previous administration. So I think you could consider it a recalibration of what the role of that function is. And I think Councillor Gusselbrock could suggest that maybe twice a year as opposed to every 2 months, or some panel that could give you advice on that. And I still think there are gaps in some of the other areas. I think Councillor Mayor Krog's comments about the SPO, I think I'm still thinking of how the city plan is going to be monitored. Is it just coming here? That's fine, but if there's extra work, who would you send it to work on? I don't think 1 or 2 extra committees is totally a challenge for the administration to manage, but it depends on the expectations around that. And I'm still looking at big picture, but I know we're diving into the one topic area here. There's a bit of a uniqueness to it, but strictly speaking, the Prosperity Corporation is not there to implement the recommendations or monitor the economic piece of the city plan, nor is the tourism function, but they need to be aware of it and align with it. Same with the Mayor's Leaders Table, same with some of these other committees. So my question is, if you do ask for that, and we could bring it back, and then you could have a conversation. If you're happy with that information, I'm still going to ask the question: what about the other components of the city plan, and how do if there's any additional ones that are needed for transportation or another topic?
So just as a final comment, Chair, I will be voting in favor of this motion, particularly given Mr. Rudolph's comments. Thank you.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. Just further to Mr. Rudolph's comments, I think staff would still come back on monitoring committee opportunities, a place and a time for that for all the 5 goals of the city plan, not just the environment. And then the only thing I would have to add is, as Mr. Rudolph said, one of the motions I was hoping to get today was the dissolving of the Environment Committee, noting that during the discussions since December, it was noted by Councillor Gusselbrock that that committee had like lost its momentum and done what often committees can do when they don't have that clear work to do. Being a monitoring committee is slightly different than the environment committee that is still in the books. It's just in abeyance right now. But I still think that we should come back as a staff to provide you options for monitoring all the goals of the city plan.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Eastmuir and then hope to wrap this discussion up. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by saying I had a professor in university who was the most articulate orator, and he said willy-nilly all the time. It used to crack me up. I don't think that was done against staff. I am not going to vote in favor of this, and I'm going to move an alternative motion if it fails, and that's going to be that staff prepare a report on establishing monitoring committee options for city plan overall, because I appreciate what Councillor Manley is trying to do here. However, I think we need to move everything forward at once, and understanding how one monitoring committee would fit into the monitoring of city plan overall is really important. So yeah, not in favor and hoping to see alternative direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Eastmuir.
Thank you.
Sorry.
How dare you? Yeah. No, I think that is a really good comment. And yeah, in fairness, we have 5 different focus areas, and the environment is one of them. I think that we are in a climate crisis, so I don't think it's the right time to turn our back on the environment and the importance of monitoring the great strategies that we've put in place with City Plan. So I think it's, of all of the areas, I think it's really one of the biggest that we need to focus on, and I would be happy to see experts helping to keep track of that and guide it. But if there's a way that we can do that for all of the areas, even better. So I appreciate you moving that idea forward, Councillor Hemmons. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to move us on and call the question on Councillor Manley's motion. I'll just quickly comment that I appreciate Councillor Hemmons' suggestion, and we'll be happy to support that if that indeed comes to the table. In terms of Councillor Manley's motion, I would not be able to support it because, for the reasons that I think Mayor Krogh and Councillor Hemmons have identified, we have 5 main areas in our city plan, and I think we need to treat them all relatively equally. Some are not more equal than others, and to have a monitoring strategy for one and not others, to me, seems extremely unfair. And regards the SPO and the Economic Prosperity Corporation, I would just point out that those are not city committees. They are arm's length organizations that serve a different function, as I think Mr. Rudolph has also indicated. So I'm going to call the question on Councillor Manley's motion, and I think we all understand it. All those in favor? Councillor Manley, Councillor Eastmuir, and those opposed, Councillors Hemmons, Thorpe, Perino, Armstrong, and Mayor Krogh. So that motion fails, and now I look to Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that staff prepare a report on monitoring committee options for city plan.
Seconded by Mayor Krogh. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Hemmons?
I think it's
I think you already have, so thank you. Councillor Perino.
Your Worship, Chair, and I just, yeah, we bow to you no matter what. Yeah, that's right. Oh, Mayor Krogh, you're in trouble. No, I just wanted to say I apologize, Councillor Manley, because I did say I would support it, but Councillor Hemmons brought up a better idea, so I really appreciate the discussion at this table to bring different ideas, and so I will definitely be supporting this motion, but I'm there with you, Councillor Manley. I do think, the environment needs to be always at the forefront of our thinking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so, seeing no other speakers, I think we're ready to call the question on Councillor Hammond's motion, all in favor? Councillors Eastmuir, Hemmons, Thorpe, Perino, Manley, Armstrong, and Mayor Krogh. Nothing willy-nilly about that decision. Thanks, Council. All right. Now, Ms. Gurry, there are no speakers on my list. What is our next direction?
If you could just, thank you, Chair, if you could actually have a motion to dissolve the Environment Committee, noting that we will be coming forward with monitoring committee proposals for all of the city plan, action plans. So that is in abeyance right now. If we could have that motion, that would clean that up. I think that's it. We will be coming back with another draft terms of reference for a safety committee as well as the monitoring committee.
And Ms. Gurry, then would we need a motion regarding the staff recommendation, which is in the report, which basically gives direction to do what you're suggesting, I think.
Yes, we also didn't have direction on the quarterly town halls. So I'm just wondering, yes, a motion, sure. You could move the recommended motion and that won't counter anything that you've done already today. I just didn't want to I wanted to make sure you weren't going to be making a motion that's opposite to the ones that have been made. So if you would bear with me, actually, Chair. On the second report. So the recommendation that the Governance and Priorities Committee provide recommendations on how council proceeds with the committee and task forces, you've done that. So looking under options for discussion, which are on your screen, I think there's no staff recommendation to move. If you could have a motion to dissolve the Environment Committee and to implement quarterly town hall meetings for emerging matters of interest to the public, that would give us direction that we need for today. And noted the quarterly town halls could be as needed, and having that list that will be on your GPC agenda, you can always say no to the quarterly meeting, or no, there's no emerging events, no, there's nothing to talk about, let's proceed with the next one. So that's the only direction that we're looking for.
All right, thank you. So regarding town halls, a motion to proceed quarterly as we see that they are needed, and the Environment Committee as it stands being dissolved with the intention to incorporate or form a new type of monitoring committee related to environment.
Exactly. Thank you.
So is somebody prepared to make a motion to that effect? Mayor Krogh, Councillor Perino, seconding. Discussion. Oh, Councillor Geselbrecht has joined us.
Thank you, Chair. So just for clarity, the motion is to dissolve the Environment Committee, but to create an Environment Monitoring Committee.
Through the chair to Councillor Geselbrecht. Councillor Geselbrecht, a motion's been made that staff are coming back with options for monitoring committees on each of the 5 goals of the city plan. So that report will be coming back with options to proceed. So the Environment Committee or the environment being under Green Nanaimo would be looked at through those monitoring committees. So that motion has been made and passed unanimously. And now to finish off this discussion, I'm just looking for a formal motion to dissolve the existing Environment Committee that's in abeyance, as well as implementing quarterly town halls, noting that if there's no need for a town hall, we wouldn't obviously have it just because it's that quarter.
Okay, so there will be a report back on monitoring committees that will come later on to council for a decision.
Exactly, yes. That motion's been made and passed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other speakers, I will call the question on the motion then. All in favor? Councillor Eastmuir, Hemmons, Thorpe, Perino, Councillor Geselbrecht, Councillor Armstrong, and Mayor Krogh, and those opposed. And Councillor Manley is noted as opposed. That motion passes. And Ms. Gurry? I think we need a motion to get you a new microphone.
Yes, could you move that and get on that? That would be great. I've heard they're in the works, so hopefully, yes, because it's kind of a pain. That is it, Chair. Thank you so much for the discussion and going through all of that with us today. And I hope that you're satisfied, so we will be coming back. And now I think it's just possibly time for a recess, because we will need to make sure you're all set up as well for the next section of our agenda as well. So I'm not sure, Chair, if you'd like to take the recess.
I just wonder, Ms. Gurry, if we wanted to deal with the Community Advisory Board on Homelessness first, or can we do that after the break?
You certainly could do that now. I'm sorry.
I'm
Mr.
hopeful
Chair.
we could do this quickly.
Yes, I will.
So, Council, there is a recommendation that a
Chair?
council representative be appointed as a non-voting member to the Nanaimo Reaching Home Community Advisory Board. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Chair Thorpe. I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation. I'm the executive director of the Unitarian Shelter, and we are it's a voting member of the Community Advisory Board, so I'd be in a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Quite right. Thank you for identifying that. And Councillor Manley has left the meeting for this portion. Councillor
Take me off.
Councillor Perino off. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I would like to move that Councillor Gesselbrack be appointed as a non-voting representative.
That is moved and seconded by Councillor Hemmons. Councillor Gesselbrock, would you be agreeable to accepting that?
Yes.
Thank you. So any discussion, any further discussion, Councillor Eastmere?
I know this is an area that Councillor Gesselbrack has worked on in the past and has a really good sense of the last council's work around the SPO and watching what's been happening with the CAB, and has a degree of good relationship with a lot of people who are involved in doing the work that the CAB is working to support in our community. So I think he would be a good representative for us.
Thank you. So, seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question on the motion that Councillor Gesselbrock be appointed as a non-voting member to the Reaching Home Community Advisory Board. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you, Councillor Eastmere. Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock, for accepting that appointment. And we'll get Councillor Manley back in for the remainder of our meeting, which will follow our well-deserved break. Thanks, Ms. Gurry. So we'll take a break until 10:45.
Chair, can I just say something before we take our break?
Yes.
Last night we hosted the Nanaimo City Awards, and I just wanted to say very much how much I appreciated the event, and I thought you were amazing. I know you're too humble to suggest how fantastic you were, but you were fantastic. And I also want to say thank you to Richard Harding. You know, the Parks and Rec put that event on last night. It was phenomenal, and I just thought that it was a terrific event, and it couldn't have been done without your work and without Mr. Harding. So thank you so much to the city.
Well, thank you, Councillor Perino, for those kind words, and I'm glad you brought it up, not for my benefit, but for the benefit of our Parks and Recreation staff who organized the event, and I thought it was very successful, and the credit goes to them, so thank you.
Yeah, and the birthday boy.
Mr. Harding, yes, congratulations.
You really did a great job.
All right, Council, on that happy note, a break until 10:45. Thank you. Community wellness and livability, I believe, and the remaining actions on our draft integrated action plan and draft priority items. Green Nanaimo and Connected Nanaimo. And as Ms. Gurry continues to share the microphone, Mr. Lindsay, are you introducing?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair and Council. I know you've all been looking forward to this moment since we unfortunately had to discontinue our session on Monday, so glad we could be back in front of you.
Sorry, Mr. Lindsay, can we just pause? There is an echo coming. We'll just deal with that first. And I'll point out, it wasn't the mayor's fault.
Thank you.
All right.
Just,
Mr. Lindsay, please go ahead.
just thanks again for all the heavy lifting that the committee did on Monday, and we look forward to continuing that conversation with you today. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Bhopal Singh. I do think that there were maybe one or two outstanding items in the green section that we just want to go back and make sure that council had a chance to review, and if there's any other new items that have come to council's have come forward, then we'd appreciate to hear that. But also, I think the intent of today is to spend most of the time on the connected section and working through those actions. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Bhopal Singh. Thank you.
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Good morning, Council. So we're picking up from where we left on Monday, and we had some additions to the green section that included some motions, and I'd like to propose that you consider whether you'd like to address. There's two relating to greenhouse gas emissions, and these motions per se are, think of them like implementing the action plan, the next step, giving us the guidance, come back to you with reports at future GPCs. So two are related to GHGs and one is related to the connected area. So we could deal with the two GHG ones now if you like, or you can leave all your motions till the end. So I just want to ask how you'd like to deal with it. So these are motions for us to come back to you with more reports, not to actually add to the integrated action plan. They're actually like moving us forward. So it's up to you whether you'd like to deal with them now or at the end.
These are motions.
They're coming forward from Councillors Gesselbrock and Councillors Brown.
And they are, the intent is to get staff reports on these topics?
If it's helpful, I can read them out, or maybe Councillor Gesselbrock might like to, as they're his.
So I guess my personal preference would be to complete the green section first, and then having done that, to move on to the connected section. Ms. Gurry seems to be nodding in agreement, so let's proceed that way if that's all right with council. And Councillor Gesselbrock, did you wish to chime in at this point?
Sure, I can move them. So the first is that information report on city plan policy C118, which includes a legal review, be prepared that outlines whether development permit area can be established to promote the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by developing guidelines for machinery, equipment, and systems external to buildings and other structures that limit the use of high carbon energy systems such as natural gas.
Getting some commentary from somewhere.
Oh, that's all. I just moved it. Maybe it's some background noise here. I'm going to try to limit this.
So Councillor Gesselbrock, help me out. Is that the same wording as I'm looking for in the email you sent last Monday?
Yes.
All right. So Councillor Gesselbrock had proposed that motion regarding a staff report. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hemmens is seconding. Councillor Gesselbrock, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, basically this is just an information report trying to determine the scope of what we're allowed to do and basically what we're not allowed to do. And that will set the basis for what we'd go forward next in terms of looking to establish development permit areas or other different types of regulatory and other programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Hemmens is taking a deep breath as if she's considering. No? If not, then I will call the question on Councillor Gesselbrock's motion. All in favor? Councillor Gesselbrock, Eastmuir, and Hemmens, and those opposed, Councillors Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krogh. So at this point, that motion fails on a tie. Councillor Gesselbrock,
Yeah,
motion?
you know, I would move forward these other motions. Basically, I'll be blunt. We're missing a member who put this forward, and it will change the outcome of the vote. So it's kind of wasting everybody's time to do it now. When it'll be a 4-4. So I don't know if we want to wait or do it over again and just have the motions reconsidered. But yeah,
I would entertain a motion if you wish to make it. If you wish to defer
yeah,
until a later date,
I'll
that's
hold on.
fine.
I'll hold off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Ms. Gopal Singh?
And then I'm going to turn over to Ms. Spigen, who's going to run through one other proposed moving one of the actions from the library up into a priority, and that's related to e-bikes, and it's in the green section. Before I hand that over to Ms. Spigen, I'd like to point out that you have the option not only of removing and adding things in the priority list, you do, as Councillor Gasselbach and Brown have done with the next motion you're going to see, lift it up from the library to a priority. And you also have the option of identifying something new or something in the priority list and saying, you know what, it's not a priority now, but we see down the road in beyond 4 years that we'd like to park it there. So just letting you know that that's also an option for you as you look at this. While we're focused on the priority list, there's a whole library that has more than 4 years worth of actions laid out. So, and with that,
Chair, but I'm
are you having a hard time hearing?
trouble hearing with that echoing in the background.
Okay.
Sounds like Councillor Armstrong, but I'm not sure. It could be somebody else, but it's a bit annoying.
Councillor Gasselbart, would you mind muting through the chair?
I'm
Oh, oops.
I'm going to do something with my headphones here, so I'll just a second.
Thank you. We are getting not feedback, but some extraneous noise from some source, and it is very distracting. So if people could just check that, we'd appreciate it. Thanks, Your Worship. All right, Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Now I'm wondering, Council, do you need me to do a quick recap of what I just said?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Nice and slowly and clearly.
Okay, so I was pointing out that Council has the option. You're considering the priority list, and then you have a full library that has other items that we haven't brought forward for you to consider as priorities. And you have the freedom to introduce new items that may not be priorities, but you want to have it looked at down the road, or looking at some of the ones that you're removing from the priority list, but still identifying them as something to look at beyond 4 years. So I just wanted to, I'm not sure we made that clear to you, but this is your document, the whole entire package, not just the priorities. And so we're just about got pretty much one thing left to do on green before we have Jamie Rose help us through the connected. So Ms. Spigen's going to discuss one of the actions that Councillor Gasselbach and Brown are looking at moving out of the bigger library and raising up, and it's one to do with e-bikes. So over to Ms. Spigen.
Good morning, everybody. So in regards to the motion brought forward...
Sorry to interrupt before you even get started. Councillor Gasselbach has his hand up.
Thanks. I think we'll just move these at a later point. I'd like to, move on. I don't think it's necessary to move it right now.
Okay. No problem. Okay, we'll move on to connected.
Sorry, we're still getting extraneous noise from somebody's locale, and it's making it very difficult to hear and understand the speakers. I don't know if Councillor Armstrong is on the call still, or if it's Councillor Manley possibly. It's not coming from here. Sorry, Council, we'll just see if we can resolve that.
Sorry, Chair, it is Councillor Gasselbrock, but it's good now, but it keeps coming off mute for some reason, but there's no background right now.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving forward.
So Councillor Gasselbrock is indicating he would prefer not to proceed with the motion at this time, and I am assuming that that's his prerogative. Ms. Bhopal Singh is nodding. So if that is the case, then we move on to other issues.
Wonderful. Okay, today we will be speaking in regards to a Connect in Nanaimo. So the first poll that will come up will be regarding two topics, a connected community, as well as integrated walk, roll, cycle, and transit network. And the reason why we've connected these two is because there's only one action currently identified under connected communities. So we'll give the committee an option to review those actions and provide feedback on them, similar to what we did on Monday in the previous committee. And if you have any additional actions you'd like to bring forward, we can discuss that after the poll results come in. Thank you.
All right, here we go. The first poll should be up. Hopefully those online have access to it as well. If not, please let us know.
All right, thank you, everybody. The results are now in. So for action number 33, we have 7 in favor of keeping as a priority. Moving on to action number 34, relating to integrated walk, roll, cycle, and transit networks. As an immediate action, we have 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Moving on to number 35, relating to the ENN trail improvements, we have 7 in favor of keeping it, 6 in favor of keeping it and 1 requesting further discussion. Number 36, we have 6 in favor of keeping Lindley Valley Greenway east-west route and 1 requesting further discussion. Number 37, the off-Bowen Road active mobility route, East Wellington to Buttertubs, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Number 38, which is the 3rd Street pedestrian upgrades, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, so that will remain. And lastly, number 39, which is the downtown transit hub, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. And I'll give the opportunity prior to moving on if there's any additional actions that would like to be included or any further discussions.
We seem to have a fair degree of consensus. Councillor Hemmons, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just an update on process for me. Those that have a dollar sign attached are in the capital plan, but is the idea if we identify everything as a priority, they will be completed? What is the cycle of completion? My concern is that we prioritize everything.
That is definitely a risk. However, what this does is it gives us direction to come back to you with more details fleshing that out and the budget requests.
Thank
So that would be the process. We wouldn't be, I don't know if the term is willy-nilly, going ahead and doing this without coming back to you to check in on, because some of these things will require potentially a public process and other direction from you, as well as budgetary considerations.
So if I may, we're
Yes.
just saying that these are our priorities, and then the capital planning and our, you know, our synergies between projects are considered, et cetera, and any decision points for further budgets come forward to council. However, these are what staff take away and say, this is what council wants us to work on.
Through the chair, that's exactly right. And I see Mr. Sims may like to add.
Mr. Chair, to Councillor Hammond's point, the ones with the dollar symbols are currently in the financial plan, the capital plan.
Thank you. Good comment. I'll just mention that on action number 39, the downtown transit hub, I indicated further discussion. I do support a downtown transit hub, but there are so many details that I think will need to be ironed out that I hesitate to put an unqualified support there. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to recreational trails. And so we have one ongoing action and quite a few immediate actions for the committee to consider. So we'll now run that poll.
Councillor Hemmons has a question as we're proceeding. Sorry, Councillor Eastmere, was it?
Yeah, I'm not seeing the needs further discussion option on this poll.
Oh, good point.
Oh, apologies about that. We may have to add it. If we maybe take a short break, we can add it. We have to add it to the poll, so we'd have to potentially take a short break and add that as an option, or we can just, by show of hands, determine the vote. Leave that to the committee to make that decision.
If council's comfortable with that option of showing hands for needing further discussion.
Yeah.
All right, then we'll proceed.
Okay, so we'll do it a little bit differently. Apologies about that.
Or it's just yes or no. Do it or don't.
Yes or no. Okay, and would the committee like me to read out the entire action prior to you voting on it, or just simply mentioning the number and then the title?
I think number and title is enough. Ms. Bhopal Singh, okay?
I was just thinking another alternative is to skip forward to another section where the poll might be complete, and then that would allow us time to fix this one.
We unfortunately can't fix it while the poll is running, so we'd have to do it during a break. Through the chair. We can't fix it.
There's no separate.
No.
Chair, it'll literally take 1 minute to add that into.
All right, let's take a 1 minute short recess while we adjust this poll and give us more options, and then we'll get right back to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Eastmere. Sorry, Council, thank you very much. I think the problem is fixed, and we'll try again with this poll.
We're almost there through the chair. There's a few more to add. Lovely. Okay, we will go back to recreational trails, please.
All right, mine's back up, so I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Question through you, Chair. I'd submitted, I was happy with my decisions. I didn't need to discuss it further. Has it been submitted, or do I have to redo it?
Unfortunately, through the chair, you have to redo it. Sorry about that.
Just checking to make sure everybody online has the polls and has, or is still voting.
I see Councillors Manley and Geselbrecht online. Do you have the polls, gentlemen?
The poll has now ended.
Yes, good.
The results are in now.
Okay, so if we go through the recreational trail option, we go for number 40, which relates to Westwood Lake Park Trail, 7 in favor of keeping it. Number 41, we have 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Number 42, we have 6 in favor of keeping it and 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 43, which is the Beaufort Park Wellness Walkway, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 44, Lotus Panatis Park Nature Trails, 7 in favor of keeping as a priority. Number 45, Midtown Connector Bevan Park Link, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Number 46, which is the Wally Creek Trail East Extension, 7 in favor of keeping it. And then number 47, which is the Wally Creek West Extension, 7 in favor of keeping it. Are there any additional actions or further discussion requested from the committee?
Regarding, if I may, action number 43, the third one down, I felt compelled to choose further discussion needed just because we'd spent so long providing that option. But thanks, Mr. Lindsay. Actually, I did want to ask, because the idea of more inclusive trails is something I would support, except that there are places where making trails more inclusive affects the has a direct environmental impact on the trail and the surrounding area. So I'm assuming that this would be in select places where environmental concerns would allow the inclusivity. Mr. Harding?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. It'll be on the existing trails that are there now, but it would upgrade them to be more accessible, more usable. It also fits in with Council's hospital area plan. There was some objectives in there of having just better accessible trails and access from the hospital district into this park.
Okay, thank you. See no other comments?
Okay, we'll move on to safe mobility. So we have 3 actions under the immediate category for committee's consideration. We'll now launch the poll.
Chair, if I may, I can't resist commenting on number 3, the safe mobility under using artificial intelligence to test capabilities and predict. I believe it was an experienced pedestrian who would probably be thrilled with that approach.
Thank you. No.
Okay, the results are now in for safe mobility. So when it comes to action number 48, we have 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 49, which is the Vision Zero Toolkit, 7 in favor of keeping it. And we have number 50, which relates to the artificial intelligence, and we have 3 in favor of keeping it and 4 requesting further discussion. So we'll open that up to the committee for further discussion and a motion following that discussion, please.
All right, thank you. So we're dealing with number 50 and artificial intelligence. And Mayor Krogh, you're first. Nothing artificial about your intelligence.
Thank you, Chair, for the vote of confidence, but the facts may not merit the kindness. Having said that, I have no idea what this will necessarily cost, and I suspect staff will come back to us at some point, but this is a pretty impressive approach. And as much as technology frightens me, and I'm finally getting around to reading Fahrenheit 451 for the first time in my life, another dystopian novel. Yes, really, Councillor Perino, I've read all the others, though, Brave New World, etc. But having said that, that would be a pretty amazing use of technology to actually save lives as opposed to preventing accidents. Literally saving lives instead of preventing accidents after we've already incurred a great deal of cost, expense, death, injury, etc. So I'm highly supportive of this. I mean, subject to staff telling us it's going to cost us $10 million to do this throughout the town, but I suspect ICBC would probably be available for grants around this as well. This is a pretty big and modern step, and I must confess, Chair, I'm kind of surprised people don't want to keep it as a priority, but I'm in the minority, and that's okay.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Hemmens, I'll just indicate that I voted further discussion simply because I think this would be extremely expensive, and I would probably support it, but when it comes right down to it, all the artificial intelligence in the world is not going to prevent somebody from taking their eyes off the road and making a foolish decision or careless decision as they're driving. So I think it would need some further scrutiny before I would support an expensive program like this. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, further discussion is needed. AI in general makes me nervous. But I'm just not sure that we, what am I trying to say? I imagine that we know very well the troubled intersections in our city. We have eyes on them. I can't imagine that, well, I'm not certain new technology would illuminate any new intersections for us. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Council? Councillor Hazelbrock.
Chair. Thanks. I'm just curious, question to staff. Does this initiative build off of previous motions? Like, have we already kicked the can down? And I do remember down the road on this, and I was just curious, was there costing for this that's been previously presented to council?
Certainly not that I recall, but I look to Mr. Sims.
Thanks, Chair. No, this is really about updating and modernizing the digital model that we use for traffic. The city collects an awful lot of data, and we have a lot of data in our GIS system. So this is about using our GIS system and modernizing the model around traffic. So it will sort of fill in some of the blanks and gaps in the data, and rather than having the old days when I was a student, used to have 4 students sitting in lawn chairs counting cars going through intersections. We don't need to do that anymore. But this is sort of a step ahead. But then creating a sort of a wholesome database over the entire city to be able to start to predict where and when we'll have conflicts, or where and when we'll have potential accidents. And it pulls together in an anonymized way all of the information that we already have at our fingertips, and this just kind of makes it a little bit more uniform. So we have an ongoing budget in our operations system to keep the model running, and so that's really, it's just sort of pushing the intelligent city model a little bit further along. So I'm not sure that fully answered the question, but
follow up if I may?
Yes.
Thanks. Just to reiterate, or to ask again, we're kind of already collecting a lot of this data, and we've been modeling traffic patterns for a long time. Basically, when we say AI, it's basically just using, more, the current software tools that are used to analyze and model traffic data to help with our assessment of high risk areas and preventative measures. Is that correct?
That's correct. You were, Mr. Chair, I hate to use the old saying, working smarter, not harder. This is really about working smarter. This saves a considerable amount of staff effort to use AI.
And I think just sort of the terminology AI can mean a lot of things to, differently to a lot of people. And I think just the understanding that this is sort of, the current analytic software that's used to analyze this stuff is probably a bit more accurate depiction, using, some of the, these more advanced algorithms. Now, I guess a concern that I've just had from the community is, like, people are noticing the video cameras around collecting data and are kind of spooked about it, and make up all sorts of interesting stories of what it is. And I think for projects like this, advancing is I think the city needs to be very transparent and communicate what it's doing, and also be very forward-facing in terms of where that data is being stored and who's using it, who has access on it, and what's being collected. I think we have all those proper protocols in place. I don't think that it's being communicated as widely as the sense of mistrust that I sort of see building in the community. So I think, I'm supportive of going ahead with this, but just a question to staff, just in terms of where the data is stored, the anonymity of it, what data is being collected, and who has access to it. just some reassurance that it's kept within the city and there's, strict parameters around it.
Thank you. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock, for those thoughts. We do obviously have protections in place and processes in place to ensure the protection of privacy as we're legislated under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. We're also legislated to do privacy impact assessments, which for every new program or activity, even ones that are being renewed, whether it's software or any type of program that the city undertakes, a privacy impact assessment is required. And I think that it's worth possibly reporting back to council on those processes for the public's sake as well. So there is protections and safety around how the information is used, how it is stored, who has access, why, and the purpose and the allowance under the Act that we have to actually collect it in the first place, and obtaining all of the regular consents, et cetera, when it comes to personal information. Data that is not personal information, which is more like these programs, it's still stored and secured, and the access is still monitored, but we do privacy impact assessments to ensure that any personal information that could be collected is protected in the appropriate way. So I think an information report on some of the initiatives, either legislated or proactive, that the city's undertaking with regards to protecting people's information and our data is probably warranted. So I just wanted to make that note.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Gurry. And certainly I appreciate Councillor Gesselbrock's comments, because the reality is, as soon as you mention the term intelligent cities, there's a segment of our population that a flag goes up and they have concerns about privacy issues, and quite rightly so. So I think if we were to move forward with this any further, it would be important that the city does communicate clearly that what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. So appreciate those thoughts. And Councillor Eastmere, you have something to add?
Councillor Gesselbrock's comments were along the lines of what I was thinking, and also just the point that it's not inherently more expensive to do these things. If it saves us staff time, then it may end up being just cheaper for us to use what is essentially an advanced calculator to help us crunch those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Bhopal-Singh.
Through the chair, I'd like to point out that Ms. Rose may have some alternate wording that might help, and also some explanation of, I think we pointed out that AI can be used for a variety of things, some of which may appear less invasive or more invasive, so I thought I'd turn over to him on this one.
Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. So I think there's a couple of things that I just wanted to maybe elaborate on. We are well aware of intersections that do have collision issues. What we struggle with is quantifying the near misses. And so we hear from people that this intersection is really uncomfortable, it's scary, but if we look at the numbers, we can't necessarily understand what that correlates to. So the new technology that we're starting to see, and it is new, and we are having to be cognizant of exploring it and how and when we use it. But it does suggest that we would be able to see those patterns where you see a car turn and a pedestrian path typically goes that way, maybe they're shortcutting. And so there's the potential that it will happen. And so if we can intercept that ahead of time, then we can prevent something tragic from happening. To Mr. Sims' comment, the smarter, not harder, it consumes a huge amount of staff time to go through the analysis at each intersection. And the two platforms that we're sort of exploring right now kind of come together and create an opportunity to streamline that and give us a more fulsome perspective of the city, not only proactively, but even reactively. We can now process that information more carefully. And then with respect to the AI, it is definitely concerning to me when I hear some of the things that my kids are getting close to, but it's really sort of a spectrum of things. There's AI, there's machine learning, and then there's just being able to have more information for staff to actually observe. So it really is sort of this spectrum of new technology to help us more effectively predict and manage safety on our roads. So one thought that crossed my mind that may land better and feel better with council is just to strike the AI statement and just say use emerging technology. But there is also more information we can bring forward when we come time to more detailed decision making.
Thank you, sir. I think that's probably a good modification of the wording, although we're not trying to hide anything here. It is related simply to new technology. Ms. Bhopal Singh, I'm assuming we need a re-vote on this unless there's other questions or comments from council. And I'm seeing none.
And through the chair, we would then make the suggested amendment from Mr. Rose so that you would be voting on removing the word AI from that. Would that be?
All right, I think we're in agreement with that.
Okay.
And we don't need a motion to alter that, do we? So with that understanding, I will call a re-vote on action number 50 and ask those in favor of keeping this as a priority to raise their hands. Councillors Eastmuir, Hemmens, Thorpe, Perino, Geselbrocht, Manley, and Mayor Krogh. And any opposed? Seeing none, I believe Councillor Armstrong has presumably left the meeting. So that passes. Thank you.
We'll now move on to the last topic, which is complete streets. And we have one ongoing and a few immediate actions for the committee to consider. So we'll now launch the poll.
Councillor Perino.
I apologize, but I'm just, with number 51, I'm just wondering if you can explain what that means. To transition the Island Highway 19A through or adjacent urban centers to become a mobility arterial street. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Just a brief.
Thank you. Mr. Rose.
Through the chair. So we do have two highways that
Yes.
bisect our city.
Right.
And so Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure has a standard and a lens that they view their roads through. It's not explicitly aligned with our road standards. And so through our urban centers such as downtown or country club, what we'd be looking to do is work with them to provide a more complete, inclusive road system that doesn't explicitly focus on vehicle movement or goods movement, but also walking, biking, transit, et cetera.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that clarification. So we'll go on with the poll, and mine just disappeared.
Thank you, Chair. We just had to make one adjustment to it. Our apologies. We thought we could get it done while you were still speaking. There was number 50. Number 52 was missing, so we're just adding number 52 in there. Our apologies.
Cut me off.
Through the chair, apologies for it not running as smoothly this time.
No worries, we'll get there. There we go.
Okay, the results are now in for complete streets. So for action number 51, we have 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 52, which is the Cranberry Avenue / Island Highway intersection improvements, 7 in favor of keeping it. Action number 53, which is design commercial, 7 in favor of keeping it. Action number 54, the Midtown Gateway Complete Street, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting further discussion. Action number 55, Terminal Avenue Corridor Improvements, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 56, the Stewart Avenue Complete Street Corridor for north of Cypress, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting to remove it. And lastly, number 57, Stewart Avenue Complete Street, Terminal to Cypress, 5 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion. So all those actions will remain. Are there any additional actions or discussions requested?
Council, any discussion or response to this? Mr. Sims?
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, the action number 56, Mr. Rose has been working fairly extensively with Ministry of Transportation, but the northerly part of Stewart Avenue is likely to be beyond the 4-year period of these projects, just because it's rather contentious with BC Ferries as well. So I just wanted to highlight that for your information.
Thanks, Mr. Sims. And I believe I was one of the 2 that voted removal on that simply because of the complications with BC Ferries, recognizing that that road is extremely busy and with vehicle traffic primarily due to the ferry situation. And I'll also add in the open disclosure component of Council's comments that I think it's no secret I have some concerns about ramifications of complete streets in all areas of our city. I generally support the concept, but not in certain places where it constricts vehicle traffic and impedes flow of vehicle traffic. So I think there's a time and place, and I think each situation needs to be examined individually and carefully. And that's always been my stance and will continue to be so. Thank you. Anybody else? So unlike the mayor, I haven't inspired other speakers. No? Maybe inspired isn't the right word. But I see no other speakers.
Okay.
So, Ms. Bhopal Singh.
So through the chair, we are at the end of the connected section. And actually,
So thank you everyone for your work today. We will be coming back on May 9th in regards to the prosperous and the city structure component.
Actually, before we finish, we do have some pieces where I just want to clarify through the chair, Councillor Gasselbach. We have a couple motions for GPC topics. Were we going to bring those back at the end or defer them to another meeting? And then we also have the e-bike piece. So just want to clarify if the intention from Councillor Gasselbach was to deal with it at the end of the meeting or at a subsequent one. So this would be the motions for additional information on the GHG related to machinery and other equipment external to buildings. Another one about both of them being legal reviews on low carbon energy systems. Then one relating to the Wixire corridor infrastructure upgrade.
Chair, just to clarify, so the motions were, some were voted on, and the rest, I believe, Council Gasselbach wants to defer to a future meeting. But the one has already been voted on, so we can't deal with it again.
Yeah. So, Councillor Gasselbach, did you wish to proceed with the other ones today?
I'll defer to a different meeting, and the one that's already been voted on, I mean, there's an option to reconsider for individuals that weren't here for the vote, I imagine. And it's at a committee level.
This is, of course, just a committee, and so all of these recommendations go forward to council.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Just to
Gurry.
clarify, Chair, a motion that's defeated wouldn't come forward to council, but there is the option, as Councillor Gasselbrock said, to reconsider at the next GPC meeting, as well as at the end of this process, we will be going through all of these motions before heading to council under consent items as well.
All right, thank you. Sorry if I misspoke.
That's okay.
Okay.
So,
We just want to thank you again. So we will be bringing forward the prosperous and the city structure section at the May 9th GPC. And we look forward to seeing those that can make it tonight for the neighborhood association meeting, which relates to identifying their priorities as they relate to the integrated action plan. So thank you.
thank you very much. Something else, Ms. Gurry?
I just see Councillor Gasselbrock's hand up.
Yes, Councillor Gasselbrock.
Thanks. Yeah, my apologies for missing the morning meeting. Morning section. I'd made a commitment before this was scheduled that I couldn't get out of, and just how it crumbled. Just my question is, we did have a discussion on committees, and then also the GPC. I imagine that the GPC motion passed to continue on with it. I guess the discussion I was hoping to have was just on scheduling, and was curious were there any decisions made. The reason I raise this is just, I think, we do have a member of our council who's a working professional, and it's difficult to attend the morning meetings. And I think that although everything can be readdressed through council meetings and that it can add significant added procedural time onto things. And I'm curious, was there any discussion regarding having, one a month of the GPCs in the evenings and alternating between evening and morning, or evening and day, to make it more accessible for our entire council?
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll leave it to you and the committee to elaborate further. I just wanted to let Councillor Gasselbrock know that no specific motion was made around that item today. However, in the recommendations for the Governance and Priorities Committee, one new initiative that the committee approved today was for upcoming topics and initiatives to be laid out in advance and provided to the public in advance, as well as a column added to that. It won't just be for GPC meetings, it would be for other engagement sessions should the committee wish to have a town hall to discuss matters of importance. And there has been a column added that was approved today where the meeting time could be adjusted based on the topic. Should you want to have an evening town hall or an evening GPC on a matter of interest, you could then have that opportunity to change the time. So no set in stone time change was moved today, but there was the opportunity to adjust the time regarding the topic should the committee wish to.
Okay, I do think accessibility is important. For folks that are retired and others that are choosing to do council full time, the meetings during the day works, and I understand it can be easier to coordinate staff, but I do think that each council makeup is going to be different, and we don't want to discourage working professionals from being on this council. And it is frustrating not having a full contingent consistently at meetings. And so I think, important issues are being discussed at the GPC, and it can kind of just bung up process on things. So I would like to move that we go to one GPC meeting a month in the evening and alternate the other one during the day, and then we can structure the schedule accordingly.
Ms. Gurry, is that motion in order?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this being the GPC, this being on the agenda today, and this being the forum and the committee to have these types of discussion, I would say it's in order. Yes.
All right, thank you. So Councillor Gasselbrock has introduced that motion. Is there a seconder? And I am not seeing a seconder, Councillor Manley. So it is moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would ask Councillor to try and keep it brief, though.
Thanks, Chair. Just as the mover, just want to quickly, I think it also allows for accessibility of the community. There's a lot of people that are working during the day, and I think it's a fair compromise to alternate between a day meeting on the GBC and then the evening. And I think it's just going to allow our process to move much smoother as a council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciate the motion, but I'm not going to support it. There are lots of people who will have to arrange childcare and make other arrangements in order to attend evening meetings because they do work during the day. With respect, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. And I'm, again, as I've said on many motions that have come before this council over the last 4.5 years, my inbox isn't inundated with people saying the times are inconvenient and they don't work for the public. And unless I hear some significant public concern raised, and I haven't, I see no reason to change the current format, so I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little stuck on this one because we have more than one working professional on council. I'm uncomfortable having this conversation without the full council here. I would prefer, if we were considering changing committee times, that we get a staff report outlining potential implications for staff costs. Yeah, I feel terrible having this position. Of course I want everyone here, and of course I want it to be accessible and inclusive, but like the mayor, I haven't heard many complaints that it's not. And as a mom, I'll introduce it. It really is impactful to work in the evenings. So if we're going to favor a schedule, I'd like to have a conversation about making it fair for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Well, Chair, Councillor Hemmens took away all the good stuff, and well done. So I certainly agree with everything you've said. My concern is, when you look at the staff that we have here today, we can't do this work without the staff, and there was a large number of staff here. So for them to take up their evening to put this in I think it's difficult to ask them to do it. I think there's a cost to doing it, and frankly, we, in fairness, because I miss certainly our working professional being at this table as well very much, and I struggle with it as well. But the struggle that I have is that when we ran in this election, we all knew what the hours were. We knew what the pay was. We knew what the hours were. We knew what the requirements of the job were, and it was something that we all said we're willing to do that, and so we put our name forward, ran, and were elected, and of which I'm very grateful. So I'm hesitant to make changes to accommodate one or even two of our councillors when it was well known up front. And for me, the biggest reason is the staff contingency is very, today we must have had 20, 25 people here. So what do you do about that? If they're not going to be here at night, we're going to miss out on some information, and that would be very unfortunate. So I'll be voting against this.
Thank you. Any other first-time speakers? I'm going to call the question, then I'll just indicate that I feel that the discussion we had earlier this morning regarding GPC and the timing built in some flexibility that was not there before, and I think that satisfies my requirements, and I think would satisfy the concerns that Councillor Geselbrecht has raised. And I take the points of other council that we're not going to always be able to accommodate everybody, and so for those reasons, I'm not going to support this proposed motion. So I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? I see Councillor Geselbrecht, Councillor Manley, and those opposed, Councillors Eastmuir, Hemmens, Thorpe, Perino, and Mayor Krog. So that fails. Thank you, Council. And now it's again back to Ms. Bhopal Singh. Are we at the end of our Reimagine section?
Yes, and
Thank
I
you.
think Ms. Beacon's outlined what to expect for May 8th, which is our next session with you. And I think on behalf of all staff here, we'd like to thank you for your patience with us and for working through the process, which, as you know, is a first for us as we work with you to get the first of your priorities down. And so we look forward to continuing that, and we look forward to seeing you tonight.
Oh, yes, tonight. Thank you very much to all staff involved. These last 2 meetings this week have been, I think, very useful and very informative, and appreciate all of the good discussion. I'm doubting that there is any names on the sign-up sheet for question period, so Mayor Krogh, motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Perino. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody.